Now the latest from ITV News Central in the Midlands.
Welcome to our programme. Our headlines tonight. There are reports that a Midlands mother has joined Islamic State terrorists, taking her baby son with her.
Also tonight, are vulnerable children as young as 11 being failed by local police?
What we're seeing is the tip of the iceberg. Children don't feel that they're being believed.
Shrewsbury Town's big moment has arrived. We're at the Greenhouse Meadow as they take on Chelsea.
And would you put up with this? Stoke's own Robbie Williams' unique attempt to comfort his wife while she gives birth.
Good evening. The father of a young woman from Sparkbrook has told a national newspaper he had no idea his daughter had been radicalised after it emerged she may have travelled to Syria to join Islamic State.
Tarina Shakil was reported missing to police 4 days ago, and her family say she is now in the Syrian town of Raqqa. Callum Watkinson has been following this story and joins us from the newsroom now. Callum, what more can you tell us?
25-year-old Tarina Shakil is believed to have travelled to Syria via Turkey with her 14-month-old son after telling her family she was going on holiday to Spain. Her father, Mohammed, has given an interview to The Sun newspaper in which he says his daughter was radicalised online after setting up a fake Facebook profile under a false name, Tamina Al-Amira, on which she describes herself as a slave of Allah. Now, the family lives in Burton-on-Trent in Staffordshire, but Tarina has links to the West Midlands, and it was to West Midlands Police that her family reported her missing last Friday. In a statement, they confirmed that a 25-year-old woman who they say is from Sparkbrook is missing. They don't name her, but they do say that they are working to establish her whereabouts and that the possibility of her having travelled to Syria via Turkey is one of their lines of inquiry. They also confirmed that she is believed to have her 1-year-old child with her. Now, given that potential link to Syria, officers from the counter-terrorism unit are involved in the search for Tarina, who has now been missing, along with her baby son, Zahim, for 4 days.
Callum, thank you for that report.
Now, children who've been sexually exploited are being failed by West Midlands Police. That's according to an official review which has rated the force as inadequate in almost half the cases it inspected. Some children at risk of sexual exploitation were recorded as having made what's described as a lifestyle choice, while serial offenders remained at large.
The children's charity says children as young as 11 are being groomed in cities like Birmingham and Coventry, but all too often are not believed when they speak out. Wesley Smith reports.
It's a harrowing fact that at least 100 young people in the West Midlands are being sexually exploited tonight. They've usually run away from home, but once out on the streets, some as young as 11, they're at great risk of being groomed for sex.
I think what we're seeing is the tip of the iceberg. It's because children don't feel that they're being believed, they don't come forward to report these incidents.
But when some have turned to the police for help, they've been let down. In cases they examined, HM Inspector of Constabulary found some officers failed to respond adequately to vulnerable children's needs. The report says some of the attitudes officers held towards potential victims of child sexual exploitation or children who run away were unacceptable and resulted in poor decision-making. Staff need to understand that children do not make a lifestyle choice to be abused.
We need to work really hard to make sure all our staff understand that when you've got vulnerable children in front of you, they do not make these decisions. They are groomed to make these decisions and they think they are making decisions that they're not. So it is totally unacceptable and we will deal with anybody in our organisation that feels that that's appropriate.
The force was found to have responded well in some situations, but there were significant failings in the way police handled 9 out of 11 missing children cases.
We were really disappointed and we want to go back through every single one of those cases with the HMIC to understand why they felt they were inadequate and where we needed to improve for the future.
There were failings in the way children were interviewed by police, and calls about child abuse were downgraded from priority to routine. That's a real worry for the Children's Society, a charity which supports some of the most vulnerable young people.
If you don't respond promptly, then young people lose faith, they lose trust. I don't think that the West Midlands Police or even my charity on my own are able to do this without the help of all the other services.
With so few children feeling confident about turning to the police, the pressure on support groups like the Children's Society to respond to cries for help may become even greater. Wesley Smith, ITV News, Birmingham.
Well, details of the Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary report into the West Midlands Force comes on the day a report by MPs also raises concerns about the relationship between the police and young people. It says they have a profound lack of trust in the police, bordering on fear in some cases.
Well, the MP, Tim Lawton, is the Vice Chair of the support charity, the National Children's Bureau. He joined me from Westminster earlier, and I started by asking him why he believes young people are so reticent to engage with the police.
Well, what we found in this report, it's after 18 months of extensive investigation with young people, young offenders, police, children's charities and others, is that there is a lack of trust between many young people and the police. But it's a bit of a postcode lottery. We found examples of good practice where the police are really engaging with young people, particularly at an early age, and there's great confidence there. But there are parts of the country where that's just not happening. And it's particularly concerning that some of our most vulnerable children and young people, kids in care, 3 times more likely than other kids to be charged or cautioned. And those children who've been affected by child sexual exploitation, these are the vulnerable kids who need to have the most confidence to be able to come forward to the police, to trust them and to be able to rely on them to keep them safe and investigate those people who may be doing harm or abuse to them. And that's where there are particular worries that at the moment we're just not getting it right.
Now here West Midlands Police has been called inadequate in almost half the child sex exploitation cases examined by HMIC. It appears good intentions at the top are not getting through to frontline officers. So how can we change that?
If this is to change, it needs to be leadership at the top. The chief constables in every force have to change their mindset and say, look, we do need to do better. We do need to work much more positively with young people. And we need to make sure all our police officers are trained so they know how to handle young people. And young people are confident to come forward with information about whether they're being affected by crime or they've seen crime. Because let's remember that young people are disproportionately much more likely to be the victims of crime than the perpetrators of it.
Tim Lawton, thank you very much.
Unions are consulting workers at Jaguar Land Rover about potential strike action after a 3-year pay deal was rejected. Thousands of staff at plants in Solihull and Castle Bromwich will be balloted after talks broke down over cuts to pensions, starter rates and bonus payments. It comes just days before the Queen prepares to open the firm's new £500 million engine plant near Wolverhampton.
The troubles at Hereford United Football Club continue. This afternoon, it's emerged the club has been charged with misconduct by the Football Association. The club is accused of failing to submit a declaration for the owners and directors test for its majority shareholder, Alan McCarthy. Both the club and Mr McCarthy have until the 3rd of November to respond to the charges.
Meanwhile, after more uncertainty over ownership and an 8-0 defeat at the weekend, supporters of Birmingham City are tonight holding a public meeting to discuss the club's future. It comes on the same day Gary Rowett was unveiled as the new manager at St Andrews, and we'll have more on that appointment with Steve Clamp later in the programme.
Now, nurses working in the community are revolutionising the way they treat patients by taking down notes on tablet devices rather than paper.
Yes, the high-tech approach is claimed to save the nurses up to an hour a day, meaning they have more contact with patients. It's already happening in places like the University Hospital in Coventry. And now it's being used on the road across the region, as Katie Rowlett now tells us.
Laura is a respiratory physio. It's 9 a.m. and this is how her day begins. The drudgery of lugging her heavy bag full of paperwork from appointment to appointment.
Gina, come in.
Hiya.
Hiya.
At 9:15, she sees Gina. Laura has to write down every ache and pain and treatment method. The paperwork takes up valuable time.
We have a few forms to fill out when we first see them, and then we also fill out some continuation notes for every subsequent visit. We have to do it because it means that we're keeping all the information up to date in terms of Gina's care, but it can take time, particularly if there's a lot of problems at the same time or a lot of different issues.
Compare this with Katie, whose day also starts at 9 a.m, but spot the difference. She's using a new way of working, a small pocket-sized tablet device that holds all the information she needs.
Hello, Katie. Hello, Pam.
And by 9:05, Katie's already seeing her first patient. The notes are quick and easy to access.
OK, I'm just going to take a look at what dressings they put on last time. This is real time, so it's much more accurate, and we have more time with the patient to do this face-to-face. So yeah, it's a much more productive day.
So after a few taps and a scribble from Pam, Katie is on her way to patient number 2. Meanwhile, back at base, Laura is still inputting her data from her first appointment.
It does feel like we're duplicating work. We're having to factor in time to write up the notes in the office, and that can add to stress pressures, particularly in the winter when it does get quite busy.
I just want to get a picture of the wound.
200 staff currently use it. 500 will be taking it on in the next few months, freeing up more time for patient care.
Katie Rowlett with that report. Now you're watching ITV News Central. Still to come, here's the man Blues fans hope will turn their club around. We hear from the new boss at St Andrews.
And just what is Robbie up to now? Find out later.
We saw some of the warmest temperatures in the UK today. Unfortunately, it's all changed as a rain band makes its way down across us. What will happen next? You have to join me later in the programme to find out.
Now, any academic study that involves chocolate sounds like a dream job, but a group of university researchers hope their work will help to improve the way small shops display their goods.
Yes, marketing and psychology specialists have been using eye-tracking glasses to find out which displays customers are most attracted to in a chocolate shop. It could be used by retailers in our region to help shopkeepers make the most of their selling space. Stewart Leaths has this report.
This is not a new form of eye test. These are £20,000 eye-tracking glasses.
The technology will enable us to work out a kind of three-dimensional map of the shop, which will show areas that are of interest to customers or ones which are just dead spots that people don't look at. So it will help local retailers work out what areas of the shop are making money and which ones they need to work on.
The volunteer shoppers were told to look for something they would buy as a gift, and the glasses monitored where they looked.
Retailers need to be certain that every foot of retailing space is working as hard for them as it possibly can. There's a very old adage in the world of retailing that unseen is unsold, and by using the technology of eye-tracking glasses, we can actually put that to the test.
Isabel Chappell is the owner of the shop.
I like to think with 30 years of retail experience, I know exactly where to put things so that customers will buy, but I'm not too proud to accept that maybe things need to change. And I do have an inkling that certain areas of the shop we could actually perform better in.
Some of the volunteers had their own ideas about how well they felt they'd browsed.
There's an abundant variety of things to look at, and they're very different in colour and shape. And they're very different in elevation. Kids would look at very different things to grown-ups. So I was looking quite a lot at the top shelves. Kids wouldn't even look at that, I think.
The research has apparently already shown that some items do get overlooked, even in a chocolate shop. Stewart Leaths, ITV News.